Welcome to another Vine edition. I've got Mr. Juan Hernandez here, one of the best heads of hair in all of Vine Group Canada. So, Juan, thank you for being a part of this. How are you, man?
Thanks, man. Good, man. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
You know what? When we host, we have an annual Vine Awards, and we do a lot of typical awards. The top, agent in this region or that region, top whatever. And one of the awards we introduced a couple years back was the top hair award, and Mr. Juan here has won it a few times. So, kind of a little inside joke here. But Juan, thanks for making some time. So with this particular segment, we're calling it the Origin series. We're basically just having a chat with our agents across the country and really trying to understand where some of them came from, because there's a lot of amazing, interesting stories. And it's also pretty impressive how a lot of our agents come from a completely different backgrounds in terms of both career and just their I guess thought on what their career would look like. So yeah, I kind of want to explore that, and I know you've got an interesting story as well, like everyone else. So let's kind of go a little further back. So Juan, were you born in Venezuela? Is that kind of where you're originally from?
Yeah, I was born in Venezuela, correct. Well, first of all, I feel flattered because the category of best hair didn't exist before, so I'm kind of
we,
like a
we had a couple individuals, including you, that were like, we have to have one. There's so many great heads of hair here. We have to do it. So yeah, no, it worked out.
yeah, man. So yeah, I'm originally from Venezuela. I moved to Canada 13 years ago. It's been a 13 winters here, so quite the ride.
Very different, definitely very different environment. But before coming to Canada, though, I mean, tell me about if you're okay from Venezuela. I think you went to the States first, right? So tell me about that journey. Like, where were you at that moment in your life? I guess you were in school, maybe. I don't know. Like, what did that journey look like going into leaving Venezuela?
So yeah, so I completed my undergrad in Venezuela, business administration, and then after that, I started working like my first work experience with working with craft foods. So I worked there for a few years in marketing and sales. So I had the chance to manage some of the good cookies, Oreo, Chips Ahoy, the good stuff.
Any particular campaigns that you were a part of that we might know that you remember?
I mean, there were like locally campaigns, but yeah, we launched with Chips Ahoy. We used to call it like concerts at the mall. So we were sponsoring like local bands, kids. So they were playing at the mall, and everything was, Chips Ahoy. It was more oriented to like teenagers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, man. It was a lot of activities. It was really fun because it was working with like young, audience. Lots of activities as well with Oreo. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, man.
And so that was your first role.
hmm
And then I think now were you in the States already at that point?
No. So after that experience, I had the chance to move to the States to pursue my MBA. So I moved to Minnesota. God knows why I moved
I was gonna
up
ask you, like
there.
Minnesota, I've never been to Minnesota, but from all the isn't that's where they filmed Fargo, I think, right? Or where Fargo is based out of, right?
I know, correct, like way north of Minnesota.
Must have been
No, it's just
cold. Culture shock for you coming from Venezuela.
well, it was because it was lots of snow, lots of cold weather. That I mean, I knew that it was going to be cold and snow, but I didn't know it was going to be that bad. But yeah, I had a family relative living there, so I felt like, okay, if I'm going to apply for a university, I might as well maybe go to somewhere that I have someone that I can rely on to in case
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
emergency or something like that, right? So overall it was fun. It was 3 years in total, the 2 years of the MBA and then the one practical training year they give you.
Got it.
Um,
Big culture. Was it a big culture shock? Because I don't know much about Minnesota, but I can't imagine, or maybe I'm wrong. I thought that it's a very multicultural type place. I don't know.
uh, you know what? The meat westerns are quite nice. Like based on my experience, that it was very nice. Everybody was very welcoming. Another big melting pot. There was a lot of people from different cultures.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Just the
I
weather, I
saw.
guess, was a big shock for you,
Yeah, it was
right?
like Yeah, my birthday is in February, and I remember my first year, it was nasty. It was like minus 50. When you go out,
Yeah.
you couldn't feel your face. I was like, crap, man, what have I done? Should go back to
Yeah.
Venezuela. Like, should I get my job back at crap? What am I doing? But it's overall was fun. The people at the university was really nice. The program, the teachers, it was a really nice experience. That I had it to kind of like check that out of my bucket list. But yeah, man. So after that program, it was time for me to either go back to Venezuela or take that year that they give you for a job, like a training year. And funny thing, I ended up getting a job at Wells Fargo. I kind of have like a little bug saying, okay, I want to try something different aside from marketing. Even though Minnesota has like the biggest headquarter for Lionel Lakes Foods or 3M,
Hmm.
General Mills, right? So I got this job in as a financial advisor. I always had that, intrigue of like, okay, what's it feel to like work in a bank, managing all these products, be like a broker. And along the way, that year was done, and it was time for me to go back to Venezuela or get another job and get a different status visa in the States. And my cousin's neighbor, he had a mortgage brokerage, and he offered me a job, and I'm like, mortgage broker, what is that? Like, so it was funny enough that he offered me that, and I thought, okay, I've been studying this, my background, my whole career has been in marketing, and I think I have to go back to what I was coming from. So I decided just to turn it down, and went back to Venezuela. And when I went back to Venezuela, I decided to, have that entrepreneurial bug, to like start a business. I think I developed that when I was doing the MBA. And so I started a pharmaceutical company from scratch, from like getting the office, renovating the office, getting the company done, all the articles of incorporations, pretty much, talking to different pharmaceutical companies around the world to get products so we can import those products to Venezuela, because we didn't produce anything. We import everything. We just pretty much taking care of marketing, sales, distribution, that kind of stuff. So I created the whole business, which actually still exists. It's called Midline Pharmaceutical. And yeah, it was 5 years of hard work. And then, things, starting to get a little bit bumpy in Venezuela, as probably everybody knows. And I
Hmm.
decided to start looking for a different option. And I ran into a friend from the MBA in Venezuela. And he goes like, oh, you know what? I'm moving to Canada. And I'm like, how can I do that? How can I do the same? And how's Canada? I've never been to Canada before. And it was funny because he said, it's like the system and everything, it's kind of like Minnesota, but people are nicer. so so I'm like, sold. Okay. And how's the winter? And he goes like, it's not as bad as Minnesota. I say, okay, that's fine. I'll take it. Right. So I applied to Canada without even knowing the country. I started a process for like about 2 years, and then I got my permanent residence. And so I moved here. And when I moved here, I started again marketing. Right. Along the way, a friend of mine who's been in the food industry, he's been like a sales manager for a well-known restaurant in Toronto. He goes like, hey man, we should open up a restaurant, a business or something like that, right? And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, like, I can help you with the business plan, pretty much doing the whole structure. But I'm not going to be on the day-to-day operations, right? I'm not going to be involved in the operations.
Hmm.
And he goes like, yeah, sure, let's do it, right? And funny thing, if I don't know if you had a business or but like a restaurant business, but if you have one, you gotta be there. There's not such a thing as you keeping your job and having the restaurant and managing both things at the same time. It wasn't possible. So I quit my job, my corporate job, and went into the business, which was bagel shop, Montreal style bagel shop. Like, who would have thought, right? A Venezuelan making Montreal style bagels, right?
Is it in Toronto or GTA?
So the first one is in Toronto. It's in Kensington Market. It's called New
Oh, okay, okay.
Bugle. It's on
Okay.
Augusta Avenue. Yeah. It's been there since 2013. There's actually another location on Queen Street as well. And then I open up. I live in Oakville, so then I open up a different one here in Oakville. It's called Oco Bagels. I opened that one in 2017, and
Wow. I
yeah.
didn't even know this. I had no idea. That's awesome.
I know, man. It's an art. Seriously, I didn't know much about bagels because from Venezuela we don't eat bagels. But once I got started into the whole process, it's honestly a beautiful process. It's like a very artisan process. Making the bagels, it's a wood fire oven, 100% wood fire. It's not gas feed or anything like that. It's just the texture, the sweetness of the bagels. We have to like learn a lot about that.
Wow.
Yeah, man, it's a Montrealers saying, that our bagels can never be the same as the Montreal ones because of the water. So like I always joke around with my clients, like we have a straight pipeline from Montreal, so so the
I've
water
heard
is just like Montreal.
I've heard that about like New York pizza, where you can take the recipe, but you're never gonna really make a New York style pizza because of the water as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe that's the secret. Maybe it's the romance of being in Quebec and that environment. But that's really cool. I had no idea. That's interesting. Wow, very
Yeah,
cool.
man. So it's funny. Like if somebody would have told me in the past, like, hey, you're gonna have a bagel shop in the future, I would have said like, shut up, man.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah.
talking nonsense. Like, come on,
Have you ever had a bagel in Venezuela? Like, was that even something in your like,
No,
you know?
no, man. In Venezuela, we had either just regular bread, like baguette, or something that is very known to us that it's called arepas, which is
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's made like a cornmeal,
yeah, yeah.
and then we stuff it with like anything you
Stuff.
want, right? That's kind of like our bagel, right? So
Got
we
it.
eat arepas for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, like it's like you name it, right? So for me, bagel was like, what is this? you know?
Where's the rest of it?
Yeah,
I had no idea
exactly.
about it. That's pretty cool, man. So okay, so you kind of during this whole process, you had a young family, I believe, when you came to Canada. I'm assuming, or maybe not. I don't know. When you
What
came here,
did I
did you have
have
a young
family
family?
here?
Yeah,
No,
like
man.
because you got some kids. Did you were they small when they came over here? Or
Oh,
they
a
all grown?
family of my own. I thought it like relatives
Yeah,
here in
yeah.
Canada. So yeah, I was married already, and we already had JP. JP was born in Venezuela. So by the time we moved to Canada, JP was like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we
Wow.
have Paola. Actually, it was funny because when we had Paola, our daughter, it was the time when I opened the bagel shop. So I was working. I took some parental leave, and during that time, I was like, okay, we can manage the two kids. Should I go back to work? Should I take this time to do something different? Right? I was, like I have some time, believe it or not, with the two kids, and that's when this friend of mine approached me to start the business. So I was like, yeah, sure, I have time to help you out with this, right? And that's how the whole idea started. Um,
And then how did that evolve to mortgages? So you've got this big old empire. You've got all these places that you're building out. With a marketing background, you had done your MBA, you had worked, you built a pharmaceutical business, and also had worked marketing at big conglomerate like Kraft. So where did you end up? How did you end up with mortgages? I guess this time around.
well, it's before COVID. I feel like, even though I was enjoying the restaurant business, I felt like I wanted to go back to some corporate job. It's been a while since I've done that, and so I sold my shares. The one in Toronto that I have a business partner, the one in Oakville, I was the sole owner, and I sold that because it was Hamilton and Oakville, two locations, and so I sold that prior to COVID. And at that time, I called Paul Clara, and say, hey, Paul, my mortgage is up for renewal. Paul was my mortgage broker. and I'm already done with the sale of my business. And he goes like, hey, what are you going to do next? And I'm like, well, probably going to go back to marketing and sales. That's pretty much my background. And but I wanted to use the financials of my business right now so I can
Qualify.
refinance,
Yeah.
qualify and refinance for my mortgage, because I don't know how long is it going to take for me to get a job and da da da. And he goes like, hey man, you're thinking like a mortgage broker now. Would you want to join our team? We're doing this. I moved to Vine, blah blah blah. And I'm like, sure, let's just have a coffee, right? So I had a coffee with Paul, then I met Charles, and I don't know, man, it just felt right. We just kind of click, and they told me exactly what the role was about, and I still kind of like it that you still have that entrepreneurial role
Hmm.
within the job, and you're still dealing with a lot of people, which I love it. That's one of the things that I liked about the business. Talking to people every single day. Kind of like you can just change their day with a coffee, with a smile, with a joke, with a comment. I like that interaction every day when I have the restaurant. So I'm like, okay, I know that I like to work with people. I like to be mobile. I just don't want to go into an office, from 8 to 5 and stay there all the time. Like I want to be able to have that flexibility, and have that also balance with my kids. I like to I don't miss any of their games or anything like that. So I think that the role itself checked all the boxes. So then I have the interview with Chris and Dave, and that was interesting. That was quite fun, the interview. Because when I went to have the interview with Chris goes like, hey, that's fine, you can recommend it, but we don't hire people from that
No
they don't come
experience
from
type. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, from banking industry. So I'm like, okay, let's just chat, right? And it felt so good, the interview. We ended up talking for like an hour and a half. I don't think I have an interview that long in my life before. So it felt right. And then, well, you guys asked me to join the team, right? So far it's been 3+ years since
Yeah,
I
you definitely the exception, Ron, because like you're right. Typically, our business model is we're kind of the source for agents that are already very productive, and they're looking to take their game to the next level, use the infrastructure and the resources, technology, and all the relationships to do that. And I know I wasn't part of the conversation, but I heard afterwards, and you're one of the almost like the exception. Like, this guy's got a lot of talent. I think he's got that spark. I think we should figure out, see if this works for both of us. And obviously, you've kind of made it your own, and have kind of gone into to the groove of being almost like you've always been a mortgage agent. So, well, let me ask you something here. So, can you tell me let me ask you from two places. So, from your time at Kraft, let's say the corporate world, structured corporate world, what's one thing you feel that you took from that experience that you are still using today, or one lesson that you feel came out of that corporate job experience?
I will say the structure, being organized, just to make plan. I plan for like the entire year. Like since I started, I did my own marketing plan, my own
Hmm.
3-year plan. So yeah, I will say being organized, being structured, um, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, and now on the entrepreneurial side, let's do the bagel shops. What do you feel you got out of that experience that you have been able to apply in your career as a mortgage agent right now?
Um, just try different things. Being in a corporate world, especially a global company like Kraft, you have a lot of guidelines that are coming from the headquarters, and sometimes it was hard for you to just go outside that path, that track. But here, have been entrepreneur, you have the flexibility of pretty much do not whatever you want, but at least be more creative. try different approaches to see what sticks, right? I think that's pretty much what I've been able to use here, and also the ability to talk to people, which in the past I didn't have, right? It's just being able to connect, find common ground, and earn that trust, right? Because in my case, for example, when I joined Vine, COVID started, right? So I wasn't able to go places. I wasn't able to meet people at different social events like I was doing before with the Oco Bagels, right? So pretty much everything was over the phone, over a video conference, right? So it's being able to demonstrate that you actually care, because there's a lot of, unfortunately, from my experience so far, there's a lot of misinformation in this industry, and a lot of people, they don't feel like they have someone in their corner, and I want to be that guy. That's always been my focus since I joined this. Like, I really try to listen to my clients and teach them. I feel like I'm their teacher. Every time I talk to my clients, especially for some home buyers, I spend a lot of time explaining things over and over, because I want them to know exactly what the whole process here in Canada looks like, and not just like, hey, here's your mortgage, be happy about it, and we'll see you in 3-5 years or whatever, right? So it's funny, because some of my clients, they just even call me for stuff that they're not related to mortgages, right? Do you have I don't know, a lawyer? Do you have a plumber? Do you know anybody? Because there are people that they're new to
That's a
Canada,
compliment,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Because you're
man.
kind of like the center of influence. The fact that you might not obviously do all that stuff, but the fact that they rely on you means that they trust you and you're their kind of advisor. Like that for me is always a huge compliment. It feels nice to be like, you know what, I'm kind of the one that can connect you with these other individuals because I interact with all these people regularly. Man, it's a good, I feel like the power, the secret power that you have is the fact that you could be a lot more relatable. You're almost like a chameleon because you came from a background in a completely different country. You took the risk by going to the States in this case first, and then you bring a really young family to a brand new country that it sounds like you've never stepped foot in once. So like, you've had all these amazing experiences. So for these first time buyers or for these small business owners or even professionals, I feel like you can connect with different types of people. And I think having the ability to adapt and understand their situation, but listen and offer real advice, especially now when the rates are so high, inflation is so high, pricing is so high, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiousness in the market. Being able to be that calm center of influence is like a nice little secret power, if you will. So one last thing, Juan. Um,
Yeah, man.
you know, what would be one piece of advice to an entrepreneur? It doesn't have to be a mortgage broker, but just any entrepreneur. What's something you would be telling yourself maybe 15 years ago that you learned or you currently use today?
You just gotta try. You just gotta do it, man. Sometimes, it's not easy when you're in your comfort zone, but you don't want to live regretting things like, oh, what would have happened if I tried this? Or maybe you have an idea that you always felt it was going to be like a winner. It was going to be like a really big project, but you're like, oh, you know what? I'm good at my job. Um, I will say go for it. It's um, again, being my background always corporate, I think when I did my master's, it just really opened up my mind, that anything is possible, man. It's you just gotta put the hours, put the hard work, and um, things will come around. It's yeah, man, just go for
Do
it,
it.
no regrets.
So we'll leave it that way. So anything is possible. I agree with you, man. Like just put your mind
Yeah,
to it.
man.
Don't limit your mind to what might be in front of you. Expand it and think outside of the box. Think as big as possible and work hard, obviously. And yeah,
Yeah,
anything is
man.
possible, man.
Yeah, man. It's when I decided to do this, I have actually somebody that told me like, oh, don't go into that industry, because that person was a mortgage broker in the past, and it didn't go well for her. And I'm like, you know what? I know I'm going to do well. And I actually, so far, so good. I've been doing really good. And another one told me like, oh, friends are not going to give you business. And well, guess what? The majority of my initial business were people that I know, you know. So again, a lot of people will tell you stuff based on their own experiences, but you got to create your own experiences. And I
I
think
agree.
I think that's key in anything that you do, not just a mortgage broker. If you want to be a soccer player, just work hard, be a soccer player. Put the time,
Let's
put the
go for it.
sweat, put the hour, and go for it, man. Yeah, just
Cool.
believe in yourself. So yeah, man.
Done. I like it. Juan, thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me,
As
man.
always. Thank you again, man. Thanks.
Thanks, brother. See you in the office.
See you.
Bye.